The laughter hit me first. It always does, fast, sharp, and never meant to be shared. We were at the Westmore Country Club just outside Milwaukee. A charity reception. White tablecloths, piano in the corner, champagne too dry for the occasion. The kind of place where everyone smiles too wide and scans your collar for a name tag. I stood by the bar, my usual post, close enough to nod, not close enough to speak. That night, I wore a slate gray jacket. Pressed. Understated. I'd bought it last winter because Laura had said something about me needing to look more cohesive around her colleagues. Evan had scoffed when he saw it. "You look like a funeral usher," he'd said. She didn't disagree. She just kept fixing his collar. But I wore it anyway. I don't remember the charity. Something about youth education or inner-city programs. The kind of cause people toast to while ignoring the waitstaff. The whole room buzzed with performative warmth. Clinking glasses, harmless jokes, small talk with teeth just beneath the surface. Laura moved through it like she belonged. Polished, poised. Every hand she shook lasted just a second too long. A trick she learned from watching boardroom men. She laughed on time, touched elbows just enough to seem interested. When she looked at me, it was with polite detachment, like I was part of the scenery. And Evan knew exactly where he stood. He had drifted over to a high top near the center of the room, surrounded by 3 boys I didn't recognize. College-aged, confident in the way only boys with trust funds can be. I think one of them was named Carter. Another had a haircut that probably cost more than my jacket. They all laughed too loudly. Evan fit right in. Then it happened. "Relax," Evan said, smirking at his friends. "He pays." He didn't point. Didn't need to. His voice had that perfect mix of volume and precision. A performance. The words cut through the din of the room and landed with a punchline's weight. I didn't react. Not at first. I heard it, processed it, felt it sink into my gut like a stone in water. That was when someone turned too fast. A man brushing past with a glass of whiskey. The rim of the tumbler caught on a passing elbow, tipped forward, and poured itself down my left sleeve like an offering. Ice clinked once against my wrist. Then silence. The jacket soaked instantly. The whiskey was cold. Sharp. The scent hit me before the stain did. Oak. Spice. Fire. And then came the laughter. Not just from Evan's circle, though they were the loudest, but from a ripple of nearby guests. The kind of laughter that's meant to signal, we're in on the joke. A soaked stepfather. A cruel line. A boy with someone else's money in his pocket. I looked to Laura. She was 15 feet away, shaking hands with some man in a navy suit. He said something and she smiled. Then her eyes flicked to me. She had heard it. I know she had. The room wasn't that loud. Her eyes met mine for exactly 1 second, then drifted away, like I was a piece of bad weather she was pretending not to notice. Then she walked over. Her steps were small, controlled. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even glance at the stain. She leaned in close enough to smell the lemon from her cocktail, and hissed, "Don't make a scene, just step back." That's when I realized how deep the divide really was. I wasn't family. I wasn't even furniture. I was foundation, the checkbook, the background man who doesn't get introduced unless he owns the room. So I stepped back. Same place as always. By the wall. Behind the noise. I took a napkin from a passing tray, blotted the whiskey as it spread down my arm. The napkin turned the color of damp tobacco. I could feel the cold against my skin, the way it clung to my forearm like guilt. Evan didn't look at me. Not directly. But his friends did. One of them, Carter, maybe, raised his glass in my direction, a mock toast with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Evan said something else under his breath. They all laughed again. Laura didn't turn around. For the next hour, I stayed there, pretending to watch the auction announcements, nodding when a paddle went up, smiling faintly when the speaker made a joke about last year's champagne shortage. I must have looked like a guest. But inside, I was just counting the hours, not until we left, but until the performance ended. I'd bought the tickets, of course. Paid for the tux rental Evan never returned. Covered the dry cleaning for Laura's dress. Even picked up the extra cost for their table because it would look better if we sat near the front. Better for whom? I watched as Evan worked the room. He had Laura's confidence, but none of her shame. Every compliment he received, every handshake he earned, all of it was borrowed from a name he didn't carry. My name on the donation, my card behind the bar tab. But in public, I was just the man behind the man. The one who kept his mouth shut and his wallet open. The jacket dried stiff. I folded the napkin and tucked it into my pocket. Didn't want to leave a mess on the bar. When Laura finally returned to me, her face was flushed. She was smiling, not at me, at the night, at the attention, at the easy praise of a world that never questioned how the lights stayed on. She touched my arm lightly, as if she were reminding herself that I was still there. "Are you okay?" she said. I didn't answer. I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth. She looked past me toward Evan's table. "They're just joking. Boys always push the line. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally." He turned me into a punchline, and she was asking me not to bleed in public. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because silence was expected. Later that night, as we left, Evan threw his jacket over his shoulder and walked ahead of us. He didn't say thank you, didn't even look back. Laura chatted with someone near the valet. I stood at the curb, watching the headlights roll past. Inside the car I drove. Evan played something loud on his phone. Laura leaned against the window, scrolling through photos of the evening. I watched her face in the reflection. She looked peaceful, like nothing had happened, like the night had gone exactly as planned. The drive home was quiet in the way a room gets quiet after something breaks. Evan sat in the back seat scrolling on his phone, the glow painting his face blue and distant. Laura leaned against the passenger window, tired but satisfied, already mentally filing the night away as a success. No one mentioned the jacket. No one mentioned the laughter. No one mentioned the way I had been moved aside like furniture that blocked the view. I kept my eyes on the road. The city lights blurred past, familiar and hollow. I'd driven these streets for years, paid for these miles, carried this family from place to place like cargo. Tonight, something finally settled in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, clearer. I wasn't temporary. I wasn't misunderstood. I was convenient. That realization didn't hurt the way the others had. It slid into place with a dull finality, like the last piece of a puzzle I'd been refusing to finish. All these years I had told myself patience was strength. Silence was maturity. Endurance was love. But standing soaked in whiskey while they laughed had stripped that lie bare. They didn't keep me around because I was kind. They kept me because I paid. When we got home, Evan went straight to his room without a word. Laura kicked off her shoes and started talking about who she'd seen, who she needed to follow up with, which donations mattered. Her voice floated through the house, light and disconnected. I nodded when appropriate. I made the right sounds. I waited. When she finally went upstairs, I stayed behind. The house settled around me, ticking and humming, a place I had funded into existence. I poured myself a drink. Not whiskey, something clean, something precise. Then I opened my laptop. I hadn't checked the accounts in months. Not closely. I didn't need to. Everything ran smoothly because I made it that way. Auto payments, linked cards, overlapping buffers built quietly, invisibly. A system designed to remove friction so they could live without thinking. Tonight, I thought. I logged in. The numbers stared back at me, familiar and obscene. Tuition transfers, credit card balances, monthly allowances that moved like clockwork, subscriptions I didn't use, services I didn't need. All of it traced back to one source, me. My fingers didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd imagined this moment before. Explosive, emotional, full of speeches rehearsed in the shower. But none of that came. Just calm. I started with access. Passwords changed. Secondary emails removed. Recovery numbers rerouted. The system accepted each command instantly, obedient and efficient. Faster than conversations ever were. Faster than apologies. Then limits. Cards tied to Evan's name. Spending caps lowered. Notifications turned on. One click, and the illusion of endless support narrowed into something finite. Then auto-payments. I hovered over the first one for a second. Tuition. A large number. A future wrapped in assumptions. I thought about the smirk. The words. He pays. I clicked cancel. The confirmation appeared. Simple. Clean. Next one. Rent. Gone. Next. Phone. Frozen. Next. Subscriptions. Stopped. Each action made a soft sound. A dull electronic acknowledgement. No drama. No raised voices. Just cause and effect finally aligned. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was correcting an imbalance. By the time I shut the laptop, the house was silent. Upstairs, Laura slept. Evan slept. Peaceful. Unaware. I finished my drink and rinsed the glass. For the first time in years, I felt something close to control. Not power. Not revenge. Just alignment. The outside finally matching the truth I'd been carrying alone. I went to bed without explaining myself. There would be time for that later. The first call came before noon. I was at my desk, answering emails I'd ignored for weeks, when my phone buzzed once, then again. Laura's name lit the screen. I didn't answer. I already knew the tone of her voice before she spoke. Tight, controlled, trying not to sound afraid. The second call came 20 minutes later, then a third. By the fourth, the silence had shifted. It wasn't calm anymore. It was loud. When I finally checked the notifications, they were clean and impersonal. Declined. Frozen. Access restricted. Each alert a quiet acknowledgement that the system had noticed the absence of me. Laura called again that evening. This time, her voice cracked through the voicemail she left. "Something's wrong," she said. "The card didn't work. Evan's rent payment bounced. Did you change something?" She didn't accuse. Not yet. She still believed in mistakes. Glitches. Anything that didn't require looking directly at me. Evan texted later that night. Just 3 words. "What's going on?" No punctuation. No attitude. Confusion stripped him down to basics. I didn't reply. I wasn't freezing them out to be cruel. I was removing the noise. For years, every disagreement had turned into a performance. Raised voices, excuses, deflection. This time, there would be none of that. No fight to win. No scene to manage. Just absence. By morning, the panic had fully bloomed. Laura called from work, then again from the parking lot, then once more when she got home. Her voice changed with each call. Concern sliding into irritation, irritation hardening into something closer to fear. "This isn't funny," she said during the only call I answered. "If you're upset about last night, we can talk about it. But this is serious." "I know," I said. That single word knocked the wind out of her. She waited for more. An explanation. An apology. Something familiar. Nothing came. Evan came home that night, earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was welcome. His confidence had drained somewhere between the declined card and the unanswered text. "My account's locked," he said. "I tried everything." I looked at him and saw the truth for the first time. Not the smirk. Not the entitlement. Just a boy realizing the floor wasn't solid. "I know," I said again. Laura stepped between us. "You can't do this without telling us," she snapped. "You're scaring him." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I simply stayed still. For the first time, they were the ones filling the silence. Explaining. Justifying. Asking questions they already knew the answers to. Bills stacked up fast when no one was holding them apart. Subscriptions lapsed. Services stopped. The invisible scaffolding I'd built finally disappeared, and the house creaked under its own weight. Evan stopped joking. Laura stopped pretending. They circled me carefully now, watching what they said, waiting for me to explode. I never did, because the truth was simple and it didn't need volume. They had lived comfortably because I stayed quiet. They panicked because I finally did. And in that panic, they learned something I had always known. Silence can be louder than any argument when it's backed by reality. The first few days, they waited for me to fold. I could feel it in the way Laura hovered near the doorway when I came home, the way Evan paced past me like he expected a fight that never arrived. Their world had shifted, and they didn't know where the edges were anymore. But I did. I had redrawn them with precision. And this time, I stayed inside the lines. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I moved through the house like it was mine again. Coffee in the morning. Dishes cleaned on time. Lights turned off in empty rooms. The rhythm of responsibility without the burden of being ignored. I had done the math, subtracted myself, and the result was balance. Evan was the first to stumble. "Hey," he said one evening, not looking up from his phone. "The university called. I missed a tuition payment. They're saying it's overdue." I nodded. He hesitated. "I mean, it must be a glitch or something, right?" "No," I said. "It's not." He blinked. "So, did something happen?" "Yes," I said. "You told a room full of people that I'm not your dad, that I'm just the one who pays." His jaw tightened. The silence stretched. Laura spoke from the kitchen. "That was a joke. You know how kids talk." "I'm not a joke," I said. Evan tried again. "Look, I didn't mean it like that. I was just—" "You meant it exactly like that," I interrupted. "And that's fine. I've adjusted accordingly." He stood there, uncertain, for a moment longer, then turned and left the room without another word. No apology, no understanding, just retreat. The next day I made breakfast. Eggs, toast. I ate alone. Neither of them joined me. It wasn't protest. It was discomfort. They didn't know how to navigate a version of me that didn't bend. The phone calls increased. Laura checked in with the school, the bank, the landlord. She paced with her voice low, sentences clipped, anger struggling against confusion. "Why are you doing this?" She asked me that night, her arms crossed at the foot of our bed. "You're not like this." "No," I said. "I haven't been, and maybe that was the mistake." She narrowed her eyes. "You're being cruel." "No," I said again. "I'm being honest. For the first time in years." She didn't reply. The next day, Evan's fuel card declined. He came home slamming doors, angry and loud. Laura told him to calm down. He didn't listen. For once, she didn't defend him. A day later, the internet cut out. I had removed my card from the account. No warning, just silence. I didn't speak when Evan swore under his breath. I didn't react when Laura sighed and muttered about how everything's falling apart. I just drank my coffee and looked out the window. They weren't used to me having edges. That was the problem. I'd rounded them off for years, made myself easy to lean on, easy to forget. Now I wasn't soft. I was structural. One evening, Evan knocked on my office door. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. His voice wasn't sharp this time, just uncertain. I turned, waited. He scratched the back of his neck. "I need help. I'm falling behind. I didn't know you'd actually cut everything off." I said nothing. He took a breath. "I didn't mean what I said at the club." "But you said it," I replied. "And you said it to be heard, to impress them, to make me small." He looked at the floor. "I was stupid." "No," I said. "You were honest. You just didn't expect the honesty to cost anything." He looked up then. "So what now?" I leaned forward. "Now you figure it out, like I did, like I've done every day since stepping into this family." He didn't answer, didn't argue. He just nodded once, quietly, and walked away. That was the moment I knew. The shift had settled. They had lived in a world where I absorbed everything. Needs, expenses, insults. Now they were learning what it meant when the wall stopped holding the weight. And I, for the first time, stood straight.